Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and you probably have heard me say, not once, not twice, not 10 times, but a million times, that the riches are in the niches. And today's guest is someone who is doing extraordinary work in a niche. He's been in every single angle of that niche, doing incredible stuff, always pumping out good value. And today, he's going to share so much of what works in his business and for his clients, and also from his professional background, so that we can all benefit and see what's working elsewhere. So I want to tell you about today's guest. His name is Josh Crouch. He has been in the HVAC industry for 9 years in all different sides of it, as an office manager, an operations manager, a branch manager, a territory sales manager, an in-home sales professional. He has been there and done it in the HVAC industry, which is why he started his own company called Relentless Digital, where he helps other contracting companies absolutely crush it. And I'll tell you what, having researched this guy's work as much as I have, I can tell you without any uncertainty that this guy knows what he's talking about, and he freaking loves effective marketing solutions. By packaging their services at Relentless Digital, they've made it easy for businesses to get results and grow their online presence. Since launching in March of 2020, Relentless Digital has helped dozens of HVAC, plumbing, electrical, septic, and restoration companies grow anywhere from 30% to over 500% online. I'm so excited to hear how the heck he's fueling all this growth for so many businesses. So let's dive into my interview today with Josh Crouch. All right, Josh, here we are. Welcome to the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thanks, Brian. I'm excited to be here.
Heck yeah, there's so much, honestly, so much more that I could have said, even just in that bio. For example, you are a fellow podcaster. You are the co-host of the Service Business Mastery podcast, which is one of the top 200 business management podcasts in the world. So I've got so much respect. Obviously, you and I could geek out about all these things. But first things first, fill in those gaps for listeners. Who is Josh? How the heck did you get here?
Yeah, honestly, I stumbled into the HVAC industry. I thought I've always liked numbers and statistics, so I thought maybe accounting was going to be my profession back in my mid-20s. And I got hired as an accountant, actually, at an HVAC company. And long story short, I spent the next 10 years in the HVAC industry doing everything but accounting, and learned a ton about business. And I think that's what the trades is great for, is learning, because all these businesses are so small, you get to learn things that are super crucial to growing a business. Ended up getting really good at the digital marketing side of things at the last company that I worked at. And from there, just went down deep rabbit holes of how do we get more leads from more local people. And I started having some people that were in a similar coaching group to us asking for help. So my first client ended up they weren't even in the US, they were in Canada, ironically enough. And I had no designs of starting my own business. I thought my career was going to remain in the contracting space. And one short year after I started that business, while I was working full time, I ended up leaving that business and doing this full time. So I've been doing full time for the digital marketing company for the last 2 years. My wife is a part of the business, and we now have 22 team members all across the U.S.
Dang, 22 team members. That is honestly incredible. And Josh, I'll tell you what, as I sat down to think about where are we going to take today's conversation, I'm excited to see where it goes. But at a really high level, one place where I know it's going to go inevitably is that local piece. You help these contracting businesses crush it locally. And I almost feel like it's a blessing and a curse. For those of us who operate fully online, we have no real targeting. We could work with anybody across the entire world. And so for you, you know exactly, I want to get as many people for this plumber in Phoenix as possible. So that dictates your targeting, which on the flip side means a smaller market, but of course, one that you can crush it in. Talk to us about that locality element of your business and of your marketing. What sort of unique pressures or unique opportunities does that present, having, geography really limiting your targeting?
Yeah, well, Google does a great job of limiting our targeting. The more they limit us to rank on Google Maps, the more that they get paid usually because they can make more money because we have to run ads to grow our businesses. But the strategy with Google Maps, there's a lot to it that people don't understand. There's a lot of different little triggers and things that you guys can and levers you guys can pull. I just did a conversation or a workshop in Utah last week, and I think the contractors that there were kind of blown away of all the little tiny nooks and crannies inside your Google Maps listing that you guys can leverage to grow your business without having to pay for ads. And it's a really unique thing. I think when I first started this business, I didn't even realize all of those different things, and there weren't a whole lot of HVAC digital marketing companies that were talking about this stuff. So I kind of found my niche, if you will, right there, where it was like, hey, maybe instead of doing what every other marketing company does with paid ads and social media and all this other stuff, let me focus here, and then we'll grow from there. And it ended up, I'm kind of known as like the Google Maps expert, even though I know there's people that are smarter than me doing this stuff. But because we post content and put out educational pieces for contractors, that's what we're known as.
Yeah, and Google Maps is obviously something that we all know from a user perspective, but mastering it from a business perspective is a totally different beast. And of course, for all of you listeners sitting there thinking, okay, so what exactly does Josh do? Well, what he's talking about is when you search for a plumber in my area, an AC specialist in my area, Google knows where you're searching from. So it's going to give you local providers that it knows that you can pick up the phone and call, which is why, Josh, I love it. It's right on your website, relentless-digital.com, which we'll talk about at the end of today's episode, is that one of your subheadlines, it says, tired of waiting for the phone to ring? Dominate your market with a superior local online presence. Where do we even start when it comes to establishing that online local presence? You talk about the little things that make a big difference in Google Maps. Are we talking about the highly technical stuff, about all these meta tags that Google wants? Where do we even begin there?
No, and honestly, I hate talking about websites because that stuff, I always see my contractors' faces just completely gloss over. They're like, I have no idea what that is, and that is not what I want to learn. The beautiful thing with Google Maps is it can be done by anybody. So whether you hire someone like us because you don't want to do it, or you start learning from people like us that, hey, I can do this myself, or maybe you can train someone internally. But there's a lot of things. Honestly, it'd probably be easier if I had some screenshots and sharing and stuff, because we use what's called like a heat map software, which is probably been around for 4 years or so, maybe 5 years, where you can highlight your Google Maps rankings with software. So essentially, if you're in the top 3, it's green. If you're not, if you're 4 through 10, it's yellow, and everything over that is red. And it's a really nice visualization. And honestly, I started using those in my social media posts to highlight, like, hey, this is how our contractor started. This is where they're at now. And people really took to those. They love the heat maps. It's probably one of their favorite things that I share with them. But even things from choosing your business name on Google My Business or Google Business Profile can be really important. It sounds really dumb, but choosing a business name that might have your most important keyword in it is a huge ranking signal. So it's little things like that where nobody tells you that stuff when you start your business. Everyone's like, well, pick a name that's, fun, or maybe it's your last name or whatever. Pick a name that has your keyword in it, because I'm telling you, it makes a difference to have that stuff in there.
Yeah, Josh, I love that advice, especially because you make me think of a silly thing that I saw on Facebook the other day, which is a Chinese restaurant. I don't know where it was in the US, but they named their Chinese restaurant Asian Food Near Me. And so people were laughing, saying that is the ultimate SEO hack, is to name, because that's a search that we actually do. So on that note, obviously that's part of it. Part of understanding what to name your business is, well, what the heck are people searching? How much does that play into your strategy? How much does it play into the decisions that you make? Is how do I better understand what is it even that people are searching?
Yeah, and for me, so ironically, I'll tell you a quick story. I actually have a client in the Northeast their name is Plumber Near Me. So I think that's more of a strategy that people are deploying. I remember seeing back at like a viral Facebook post, I don't know if it was 2 years ago or so, there was a dentist who their entire rebranding was Dentist Near Me, and they had this big old like map pin at the top of their building and stuff. But honestly, it really depends on, like, your show is about the niches. Even being a plumber, for instance, well, that means a lot of things, right? That means maybe we do faucets, maybe we do bathrooms, maybe we do pipes, maybe we do drain cleaning, water heaters. Like, what do you want to focus on? Essentially, the question we ask people is, what makes you the most money? Now, we usually tend to know these things because we talk to dozens of plumbers, electricians, HVAC companies, stuff like that. But it's really important to understand what makes you the most money and what do you want more of? And then we usually work our way backwards of like, okay, how do we kind of reverse engineer this so we can get you more of those leads while still getting you enough other leads to keep you busy?
Yeah, you almost just made me realize, Josh, that I think I let you off the hook a little easy earlier when you said you don't like talking about websites. Part of me is just like, wait, hold on. Then we need to go deeper there, because I'm going to ask you this. Last week on the show in episode, let's see, what was it? Episode 599, we had Alexander Biega on it, who does a lot of Google Ads work, for example. And I know today we're not necessarily talking about Google Ads, but one thing that he talks about from an ads perspective is that when someone comes across your company, it needs to be so easy. No friction for them to hit call and get on the phone with you. He said that your landing page needs to be super simple. And of course, when people do find us, a lot of times they will check out our website. How much does a website play into this? Because I'm actually thinking of my behaviors as a consumer, and when I search for something on Maps, I don't even end up going to their website. I literally just hit call. How much does that weigh into your overarching digital strategy?
Yes, that's a great question, actually. So Google doesn't want people to go to your website. Now, they still do. When it comes to where they actually convert, meaning where do they contact your business, they're usually contacting you through the Google Maps listings via click to call on mobile, or even typing in the number if they're on desktop. But I would say the data that I had last year that I had studied, so of all the phone calls that we had for website traffic, and Google My Business converts about 9-to-1, meaning for every 9 phone calls on Google My Business, 1 call came through the website. Now, that doesn't mean people don't look at your website, because we track the number of actions that people take on your Google My Business listing. And it's actually almost 2-to-1, the number of people that go to website versus click to call. So these numbers might start sounding confusing, but what that means is they find you on Maps. They're using your website as essentially a tool to make sure that they want to do business with you. So does your website look clean? Does it have easy navigation? Does it have unique pictures of you and your team, not stock images with the guy with the hard hat on at a residential home, which we know is totally false? Things like that. Does it have your awards? Does it highlight your reviews and your social proof and stuff like that? I think that's what people are searching for, but ultimately they end up going back to the Maps listing and they use that phone number to call you.
Yeah. That right there, I'm going to call this out for you listeners. What Josh just shared with you is outstanding advice for literally every single business. Nobody wants to see your stock images from Unsplash. Go to Josh's website. He practiced what he preaches. You're going to see a picture of Josh and his wife, the 2 people behind the actual company that you're going to be working with and interfacing with. So I love that approach. It's really good advice, Josh. It also leads me to think about many years ago, probably close to, I guess it was 10 years ago now, how many local businesses I used to work with when I had my local marketing agency and we were building websites for companies. And the one question, I'm going to call out plumbers, because plumbers are very sharp people. They know exactly what they're doing, and they are often very keen when it comes to business. And a lot of them would ask, how will I know where people are finding me if they all just pick up the phone and call? And so attribution tracking is a whole different world of measuring marketing success. Josh, where do we even start with that? How much does that play into the work that you do with these contractors?
Yeah, I mean, attribution tracking is everything. We track everything from calls and form submissions, and even try to take those things, like, it pains me to say this, but business, especially small local businesses, you have to figure out how to make sure that you connect with your customers very quickly. Just because you're local doesn't mean people are going to wait a day to hear from you. So things that we focus on are generally to speed to lead, meaning we hook up text messaging software. If you miss a phone call, we'll text someone back. If a customer fills out a form submission, we'll essentially get a text message out to that person immediately. I don't think that completely answers your question, but as far as attribution tracking, everything from like the website that you connect on your Google My Business page, we put a UTM campaign marker on that website. So that way, when people click on it, we know that they converted from Google My Business to your website, and we can actually track that. We're starting to do the same thing with Google My Business posts. There's a lot of different stuff, especially when you get into like the paid ad side. You definitely want to have UTM parameters on the page that they land on. So that way, you know, hey, they converted, what page do they go to, what page do they go to next, and so on. So that way you can actually start to follow their history a little bit and then maybe retarget them based on what they were interested in on your website.
Josh, you just dropped so many awesome tactics on us just in that one very quick answer. You talked about automated text messages for missed calls. You talked about retargeting, obviously UTM tracking. That's a little bit more of a technical thing. And listeners, I feel like Josh right now, where I'm just like, I wish we could show you this. Obviously, you're listening through your headphones, your car speakers, wherever it is that you're tuning in. But these are just technical things that are easy to implement because at the end of the day, Google wants you to succeed. Josh said it. Google knows that they will get more traffic if every time we go onto Google, we find what we're looking for. So they want us to succeed. On that note, Josh, you've brought up Google My Business a few times. A lot of people probably have never done anything within Google My Business. Talk about that as a tool and how that plays into our success when it comes to anything local.
Yeah, so it's actually called Google Business Profile now. I still call it Google My Business, and I probably always will because that's what I grew up with it being. But Google Business Profile has a lot of things that you can fill out. So for instance, I'm going to use the trades example, and every single industry is different. But for instance, HVAC, you get to choose a primary category for your Google Business listing. For HVAC, there's like 7 main categories for residential contractors, but there are also a few others that you could choose as far as secondary categories. So you can choose up to 10 categories. Each of those have predefined services. You can add products. You can add photos. Google is really, really good. It's almost, and I know you mentioned about sharing the screen, but if you guys go to a tool called, it's cloud.google.com/vision, and you scroll down about halfway down the page, there is like a try this tool type of thing. You can throw a photo in there. It is almost eerie how much Google can get from one single photo. We used to have to feed that data on the back end of the photo, which is called EXIF data. We don't have to really, we still do it, but we don't really have to do that anymore. Google's very good at understanding what is inside your photo with a very high degree of certainty. They can read the name of your truck, your hats, the logo on your t-shirt, the brand of the equipment that you're working on. They can read all that stuff without us giving them any prompts or anything like that. There's a lot of stuff. It's insane what you can do with those. And honestly, they keep adding features, which means that they see that there's a lot of value in it for people, users. And that's why so many people come to it. Because even with Chat GPT and Bing Chat and all this stuff, Google still dominates the search landscape. And they want to keep the market share. Small businesses, we don't really talk about market share as much because our market share is so tiny. But for Google, market share is everything. So if they have 92 or 93% of online search, they want to keep that. And for players like Bing and Apple Maps and things like that to start kind of putting some money into some products and stuff like that, they definitely have their eye on those things.
Yeah, I love the fact that you brought up the concept of market share, because I think that's the fun part of operating within a local market is you can and you should think about market share. If I'm a local plumber, for example, I want to get all the plumbing business for my specialties in my local area, and I can measure that. I can see how many times people are calling my number versus if I could get their data versus the other plumbers in the area. I want everybody to call me. And on that note, how competitive is this stuff, Josh? Obviously, you guys are good at what you do, but for businesses who are thinking, well, I'd love to be the number one ranked, let's say web designer, if we go outside a little of the contracting industry a little bit, I want to be the number one web designer in my local area. Let's say when I grew up, I was in the suburbs of Boston. How hard is it to do this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, digital marketing, I thought HVAC was competitive. I feel like I've had 2 different marketing companies reach out to me that are just starting their business in the last week, just asking for advice and tips and stuff like that. And of course, they're targeting the same industry that I'm targeting. So it's competitive, and there's a lot of competitors I don't even know that exist. I know the big ones. I don't know all of them. I feel like there's more jumping in every single day. But it's one of those things. If you are listening to this and you're a digital marketing agency, just like this podcast is about, focus on a singular industry. Get really, really, really good at a singular industry or a singular service before you start doing other stuff. Like for the entire first year of our business, we didn't touch websites. We didn't do social media posts. We didn't help run local service ads, which are the Google guarantee ads at the top of the screen. We didn't do any of that stuff. All we did was Google My Business. And for the entire first year, I think about 95% of our clients were HVAC clients. So that's all we focused on. And we became known as that company that's all we talked about. That's all we focused on. And then we started adding other things once we figured out that we were really good at this stuff and a lot of the people weren't talking about it.
Yeah, Josh, I love that you went there, because I feel like that is one of the scariest things for anyone that's starting their business or is relatively new in their business is niching down. I think it's probably the age-old debate in the world of entrepreneurship, because a lot of people say, well, I don't want to limit myself. I want to serve everybody. But the reality is, by you niching down, that's the reason why you became known. You guys are relentless in what you do and who you serve. And now you're able to absolutely crush that market. So if I'm a local HVAC company, I know that you can help me. Digital marketing wise, you can help me because you've established that presence. Talk to us about your thought process. Were you at all tempted to not niche down in that way? What was it? And obviously you have so much career background in that industry, but what was it that made you say, no, this is the path forward, whether it quote unquote limits us or not, this is the way forward for us?
Well, I'll share a quick story before I get into that. My onboarding specialist, he's been with us 6 months, I think. One of the first questions he asked me after he got hired was, how come you only do this for HVAC companies, plumbers, and electricians? He would think that limits our business. And it's like a reverse paradox type of thing. Like it actually helps you grow faster, because when it comes to setting up systems, SOPs, processes, when you have the same type of client across the US or wherever your service area is, and you get to do the same things over and over and over and over again, it makes it really easy to create templates, to create lists of keywords, to create things like that are very easily duplicatable. And you understand the seasonality of those businesses. You understand their highs and lows, their pain points, their struggles a lot easier. Now, obviously, I came from the HVAC industry, so I felt a lot of that stuff myself. I would say niching down for most people is probably more difficult than it was for me. It was very easy for me. I came from HVAC. I love the contracting space. So for me, it was like, well, this is what I want to focus on. I could focus on HVAC all day long. And then we started expanding into plumbing and electrical work and stuff like that. And at some point, I'm sure we'll expand from there. But again, we want to be really good at those things before we move on to the next thing, because then it makes growth that much easier. And then it's easy just to put gasoline on the fire, right? Go get some ad space, go speak at events, go get booths at different events, things like that. That stuff's easy. It's figuring out the back end stuff that causes so much headache and is why I don't have any hair left.
I love that, Josh. And it really does paint that picture of what it looks like to grow a niche business. Is when I do think about you, okay, let's say you've hit every HVAC company in the Phoenix area. Well, you already talked about getting a booth at a trade show, speaking at different events. That takes you across the entire country. And that's why it's no surprise to me that you guys have grown as quickly as you have. 20 plus people working for you is incredible. You also mentioned ads, though. I want to talk about where ads fall into all of this. Let's say I'm a local electrician and I'm wondering, gosh, should I throw money at Google Ads? You know, they like to mail all of us those $500 free ad coupons, and that's tempting for so many people, even though they have no idea
Google
what
makes
they're
any money.
Yeah,
they just keep giving away the ad spend for free.
Yeah. So talk to us about where that comes into the whole marketing mix for local contractors.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I get this one to last a lot. So we actually don't run paid ads for people, either PPC or social media, YouTube, you name it. We don't do those things. Now, it doesn't mean we won't always do it, but right now we don't. I've been asked a lot. My problem with it is, and it's not a problem. It's a good thing for growth and acceleration, but there's a lot of things that are done incorrectly on your Google My Business profile, or the website's not set up correctly. So you're not even found locally to help yourself. So what happens then when you start paying for ads, you're paying that much more because you don't have a great local presence. You don't have the reviews to back up what you say on your website or your landing page. And that cost per acquisition for small businesses is really high. And what I mean by that, it means for every customer you get, it ends up becoming $350, $400, $500. A lot of companies that start paying for ads, they also don't have a great customer service rep or somebody to take care of those customers on a speed to lead basis. So they're paying even more for those leads because they have to burn through them, and they wonder why they can't grow their business. They're on this hamster wheel of death, essentially, where they just have to constantly keep throwing money at the problem and they never quite get ahead. So that's really where, if you get a strong base and a strong foundation and you have a little bit of hustle and grind in you, you can grow, especially in the trade space. You can grow to $1 million or $2 million in revenue without any paid ads. After that point, when you start adding people and you have more mouths to feed, then you might have to start putting some money into Google or Facebook or something like that to keep your team busy. But there's a lot you can do before that ever gets to that point, which should keep your marketing budget down, which will allow you for growth and to hire and train more people.
Yeah, I'm going to call that out for listeners right there, because I think it's such an important point that you just made, which is a lot of people think, well, I need to be spending money on ads right out of the gate. But Josh just showed you it's actually the opposite. Gain some initial traction, understand your market, understand your own onboarding, your customer service processes, and then you'll be even more effective when you do launch your ads. But in that answer, Josh, you introduced something that I knew we'd talk about it today. It's one of the things that you guys offer at Relentless Digital is enhancing online reputation. You said the R word, reviews. How important is that? Because I know all of us, the one thing that all of us slack when it comes to is getting reviews. What's your best tip for getting those reviews, and how important are those reviews?
So reviews they're crucial. They're a little bit of a ranking factor, but they don't really play as much into the ranking side of things as they do on the conversion side of things. Meaning if your listing gets found or your website gets found, those reviews and that customer feedback is super crucial for you to grow your business. So one thing that there's a couple of strategies we use, but one, especially with software today, and tools like Zapier, which connect all kinds of different software, automating the process is one of the best ways. And I started doing this when I was at the last HVAC company before I left the industry. We connected our CRM and automatically had text messages going out as soon as the job was over. We sent those text messages to everybody. If they got an estimate from us, if they had a callback or a warranty issue, we sent them to everybody. And we went from, I think we had 43 Google reviews when I started. 2 years later when I left, we had over 500 just on Google. And then we increased them on Facebook, Better Business Bureau, Nextdoor, et cetera. Because the thing that people don't talk about with reviews is Google's great. Google's the number one place to get reviews. However, if people find you on Bing which if you buy a PC, Microsoft Edge is the main browser, which uses Bing. Facebook reviews are the most important thing on Bing. If you're using Apple Maps, which there's over 120 million devices just in the US which have Apple Maps loaded onto it, Apple Maps unfortunately uses Yelp for their data. So if you don't have Yelp reviews, you may not show up well on Apple Maps. So it is important to also spread those reviews around. One of the other strategies I would say, if you have not been good in the past at getting reviews, take your customer list and reach out to them. Send them a text message and say, hey, this is Josh with so-and-so company. My job as the owner is to make sure you had a great experience with my company. Would you recommend us? And then, of course, if they say yes, send them your Google short code for reviews and send those out to people. Just save it as a text if you don't want to buy a platform. Otherwise, there's a lot of text messaging platforms out there that you guys can leverage to kind of automate some of that. But that's been really big for us, especially for some of these clients that come on that don't have a lot of reviews, is we'll do that almost immediately and get them another 20, 30, 40 reviews within the first month of working together.
Yeah, I love that because it just revealed where I really wanted to go next, which is listeners always know that we ask our guests for what is your zone of genius. And Josh, you did not hesitate. You wrote that your zone of genius is that you are relentless in your approach. And you just showed it when it comes to getting reviews. Be relentless in your approach. If I do a quote or an estimate for someone, I'm going to ask them for their feedback. If I have an existing list of customers, I'm going to reach out to them and ask them if they would recommend us. That is a relentless approach. Josh, it's the name of your company. I know how important it is to you. Talk to us about how relentless, what that means to you and why that is the foundation of everything that you do across your entire company from top to bottom.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that question. So I was trying to figure out what I wanted to call the company when I figured out that I was going to start this. And I didn't have ChatGPT back in 2020 to help me out with that. So it was one of those things every time I've ever come across a problem, like I told you in the beginning, I thought I was going to be in accounting, and then all of a sudden I'm in the HVAC space. And that doesn't even get into all the learning hard lessons that I learned in that first year or two in the HVAC space. But everything has always been a relentless commitment to learning and educating myself. And if just because I don't know the answer, I don't stop. I keep asking questions, or I find the next smartest person to ask them a question. And it just continues. And that's continued to kind of carry me through this company, because there's always something since you've had a digital agency, there's always something to learn. Even on the podcasting side, there's so much stuff that we don't know, even if you think you know a lot. So it's just been a commitment to constantly educating, constantly learning, and not stopping, not letting a short-term roadblock affect our progress.
Yeah, amen to that. That is something that we face as entrepreneurs all the time, is that decision point of, is this going to stop me? Is this going to slow me down? Or am I going to relentlessly smash through this barrier that's in front of me? And Josh, even obviously today we're talking about you helping other businesses, contracting businesses through your own experience, and now through what your marketing agency does. I always like to say to listeners and remind them, you are one of us. You are also an entrepreneur. You are also simultaneously growing your own business. So I always love hearing people's insights about their own business as well, not just what they do for clients. Josh, what are some of those things? Now you're a few years into this, doing it full time, running a company that has a ton of employees, mouths to feed, as you call them earlier. What are some of those things that you've learned that you're just like, gosh, I could have never imagined that. Even with all my years of experience in business, I didn't realize that this was going to be the case when I was running my own business. What are some of those things that have surprised you?
Yeah. So honestly, so I'm what's called a visionary. If anyone's ever read EOS or Traction or done anything in that space, I'm on the visionary scale pretty high. I'm not a great integrator, but I would say some things. So one of the best things that I did when we were about $1.5 million in revenue was we hired an operations manager. Actually, my wife knew right away when she interviewed her that this was the lady that we were going to hire. And bringing on somebody that was the complete opposite of me, and they are very good at getting stuff done. They don't not necessarily have the visionary mindset. was super crucial. And I think the earlier you can do that, the better. You definitely don't want to have a team full of people that are just like you. I know that might be easier because you're like, oh, this is great, because you get along with those people, you have great conversations. But find people that are strong where you're weak would be the biggest advice I would give anybody, because I think a lot of times people hire people they like because maybe they interviewed well. Test them. Send them some sort of an assessment beforehand, like a personality assessment, whether it's DISC or Kobe. There's a lot of them out there. Find people that are not you and help them, or have them help you grow your business, because they'll fill in your blind spots, if you will. And that's been really big for us, is finding people that are super organized. I have a lot of ideas. I'm not the best at organizing those ideas and making sure that those things get done or completed. So having people on my team has really helped us accelerate our growth.
Yeah, I love that. Really good advice. And you listeners, it's not the first time that you've heard that advice. It's because it is the truth. It is the reality. Take it from Josh, who has grown an incredible business of his own, that he's lived this, he's experienced it, he's learned it the hard way, and now he's offering it to all of us so that we don't have to go through that, or maybe we can go through it a little bit quicker. So I love that feedback, Josh, and those insights. I want to ask you about this, because as we come towards the end of today's interview, I know that a lot of listeners are going to be thinking, holy cow, you just gave me so many ideas for what I can do, whether it's reviews, whether it is understanding how to think like your customer, whether it is being relentless in your pursuit of being found by other people and by learning from other industries. They're going to steal ideas, in this case, from the HVAC industry, which is why I love studying other industries. But Josh, inevitably, some listeners are going to be sitting there thinking, should I build up a local presence? Should I start going deep into Google My Business and all these different tools to start standing out in my local area? What's your take on that as a business owner yourself, especially as someone who has a digital marketing industry or business yourself? What's your take on service-based businesses, not necessarily contractors who will come to your house, crushing within a local geographic market?
Yeah, I mean, I think people, especially private equities, come into the home service space hard over the last 3 years since the pandemic really started. It started before that, but it really accelerated through the pandemic. And as far as the local side of things, I think every business owner should at least know a little bit about the local side and maybe how their business looks on the local landscape. Because if you don't know, it's kind of like burying your head in the sand. And some of your best customers, especially if you're in, the home service space expands way further than plumbing, electrical, and HVAC. And there's so many different things that you should learn about that. There's some great YouTube channels out there that give just awesome advice. I mean, honestly, I'm still learning from these people who literally they spend time testing and studying this stuff. So there's a lot of resources out there. You just have to have, again, the commitment to want to learn enough just to be dangerous. And then you can decide if you want to hire someone or if you want to do it yourself or whatever. But you need to know at least enough to get your business to a certain point. Because when you start your business out, you can't afford to hire somebody. And I see it all the time where new business owners are like, hey, I'm doing this in revenue. I need to hire a marketing company. And as soon as they come to us, I'm like, it's probably not going to fit. Because you need to get yourself to a certain point before you can really start hiring someone. If you're still answering the phone while you're in the basement of another customer's house, you're not ready for a marketing company. You have to have some things operationally set up so you're not wasting that money that you're spending. So I don't know if that was helpful. Hopefully it was. But that would be my advice, is at least know enough so that way you don't get I don't know what word I'm looking for, sold, I guess. You don't get sold by someone that's got a fancy presentation.
Yeah, I love that advice, particularly because, again, you clearly, and I know that your brain works in a really logical way because you are that visionary. You can see the whole puzzle so that you know how to put the pieces together. And I think one part of so many of your answers here today that you shared with us is understanding that order of operations. Hey, you need to have these things in place before you start doing this. So I think that these are things that way beyond the HVAC industry affect all of our businesses. And I also want to add this for you listeners. Josh is a little too humble to toot his own horn here, so I'm going to do it for him. But he mentioned there are so many great resources out there, YouTube being one of them. One of the ways that we actually found Josh, we came across his work and invited him to come on the show today, is his YouTube channel is incredible. So definitely search Relentless Digital on YouTube. You're going to find a lot of videos from Josh where he talks about how to rank in Google, how to claim your business on Apple Maps, how to add a Google business listing to your business's online presence. All of these things are very simple to set up, if only you know that they're out there. So kudos to you, Josh, for sharing so much of that goodness with people, just literally as a platform for you to give back to businesses who are trying to grow. I love that about you. Now, as we do come towards the end, this is where I give you the hardest question of today, because I always love tying this episode up into a pretty little bow for listeners who with all these ideas are thinking, I've got some work on my hands and there's a lot of stuff that I can implement in my business. What is the one thing that you think business owners should do after hearing today's episode? With so much that we talked about, what's the one action that they should sit down and say, you know what, if this is better in my business, I will be in a better position to grow? What's that one thing, Josh?
Oh man, one thing. Honestly, we didn't touch on content marketing, but don't be afraid to put yourself on camera is probably what I would say in today's world. I know it's not what we talked about previously here, but honestly, putting myself behind the camera and talking and giving insights and tips and things like that, no matter what your industry is, even if you're in the home services space, since that's what we talked about today, tell your customers how they can do some easy repairs themselves. Now, it's like totally backwards, right? Like, oh, I don't want them to do repairs. I want them to hire me. But I'm telling you, people don't really actually want to do that stuff. And the ones that do, they're not your customer anyways. They're going to always DIY something. So you're kind of weeding them out before you get there. But the opportunities that get opened up to you when you start talking to that camera and you start giving advice and you start having people liking and following and subscribing and stuff like that can really accelerate your business growth. We're at about $3 million in revenue, annual revenue. And I have not paid for any advertising in the 3 years we've been in business. Our marketing spend is about 1% of sales, and most of that is hiring new people. And that's all because we put out content, and we put out content regularly, video, blogs, Facebook posts that are just useful, sharing what's working and what's not. People really love that stuff. They love and for me, it's a way for me to give back, but I also know most people are not going to do this work. They're not going to do what we do. So they're going to come to us when they do want somebody, and they're going to want to hire a pro. And if you look at it from that mindset, we did the same thing at the HVAC company, is that we dominated local Facebook groups because we always gave helpful tips and advice. And I would say, if you're starting your business, get behind the camera or learn to get behind your phone and just start giving advice. Get out of that comfort zone of like, oh, I don't want to get in front of the camera. I'm worried what someone's going to think of me. People don't care. They actually want to know who is doing business with them. So that would be one of my biggest tips to help grow your business.
Yes, golden nuggets of knowledge right to the very end. Listeners, go back and listen to what Josh just told you to do in that answer, because there's so much goodness in there, including that little piece that took me way too long to learn in my entrepreneurial journey, which is a lot of people wonder, well, if I'm just giving them all of this content for free, why would they hire me? Josh gave you the answer to that, which is they're not going to do it on their own. And by you being the voice, the face that introduces them to those concepts, who are they going to call when they need help to get their business on Apple Maps? They're going to call you. So Josh, you are a wealth of knowledge. I love the way that you operate. It's no surprise to me that you've grown as quickly as you have and that there's so much growth in your future. You're awesome at all these things that you do. So I want to open the stage for you and tell listeners where the heck they can check out all the awesome work that you're doing at Relentless Digital, your podcast, your YouTube channel. Don't be afraid to brag on all those awesome places for us.
Yeah, I mean, we have content everywhere. So, and it's all consistent. So it's Relentless Digital, whether it's on YouTube or LinkedIn, Facebook. I even started using TikTok. I don't consume TikTok. The rest of my house does, but I'm definitely the slow one when it comes to getting to there. But we do put stuff on TikTok as well. But our website's got a lot of great information as well. There's been things that we post blogs on there every single month. We try to put case studies and stuff like that up as well when we can. But if you go to our website and if you want to schedule a call, all of our call to actions are going to get to my calendar, so you guys can schedule a call anytime and just talk about your marketing strategy and things like that. I'm totally fine giving, even if it's not going to be a fit with us, just giving you some pointers and kind of pushing you in the right direction. But we're very visible. We can be found any platform. We have content everywhere. So feel free to reach out if you guys, if you ever want to listen to us on a podcast, or if you're in the home services space and you want to learn some tips and things like that on the service business side. Our podcast is solely focused on service business owners, managers, and technicians that want to be owners someday. And we cover the entire spectrum from bettering your office staff, sales training, technical training, tools, software, all kinds of stuff. And we cover every facet of it because my co-host, the guy that started the podcast, he still owns a service business. So we both came from the service business side. And I think we have a little different perspective when it comes to being able to help you on that stuff.
Yes, so you guys already know the drill. Wherever it is that you're tuning in to today's episode, look down below for all the links that Josh just mentioned, including his website, relentless-digital.com, a link to his podcast that you should definitely check out, his YouTube channel. He's putting out awesome content all over the place, including right here with us today. So Josh, thank you so much for coming and joining us today on the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you, Brian.